You know, when I first heard the title of this movie, I thought, hey, somebody made an unauthorized autobiography about me. Yeah, I said that. I said this next bit too. Sequel incoming soon, called Sexual Tyrannosaurus. Sex Appeal is brought to us by director Talia Austin and stars Mika Abdallah, Jake Short, and Mason Verso. Avery, a teenager with a tendency towards perfectionism, enlists her friend Larson to help her prepare for her first time with her long-distance boyfriend. So Sex Appeal is one of those cute little high school romantic comedies. You know the ones like 10 Things I Hate About You and She's All That, etc. One of the big differences here though is that Sex Appeal is very rated R. Now even though it revels in its R rating, it still has that same tone of those cutesy high school romantic comedies like I mentioned a moment ago. So if you're into those kind of movies and you're okay with a bit of raunchy sex comedy, you'll probably find something here to like. The crux of the story is that Avery, played by Mika Abdallah, is an overachiever. She aces everything. There's nothing that she sets out to do that she is not the best at. There's this big yearly nationwide science fair type thing coming up and she always wins. This is her senior year in school, so she's really looking forward to blowing everybody's mind with this one. And she finds 1 month before going that this year they're asking the contestants to submit an app that they made that fixes a problem that they have in their life. Problem is that as far as Avery is concerned, she doesn't have any problems. There's no shortcomings she has. She has perfected everything in her life, so she doesn't really know what she needs help with. Now, while all of that is going on, her long-distance boyfriend, who will also be at this science fair, tells her, hey, you know what? We're getting older. We've been long-distance relationshiping it for a while. How about this year when we get together, let's really get together. And while a bit awkward at first, Avery decides, okay, now's as good a time as any, but you know what? I've never had sex, and I honestly don't know what to do. Ding, 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 ding! I found my problem. So she decides to do the research and make an app that will allow people to have a very good sexual experience. And the name of the app is Sex Appeal. She enlists the help of her longtime friend Larson, played by Jake Short, to help her figure out what it is to have good sex. Problem is that Larson has had quite the crush on Avery their entire lives. They are best friends, but he tried to make a move one time, didn't work out too hot for him, and they remained friends, but that has put a bit of a rift in between. But regardless, as soon as she shows up and says, hey, Larson, I need you to help me with sexy time, he's like, okay, no problem, I'm there. And wacky antics ensue. Now, I don't have anything against the romantic, teenage, comedy, high school movies, or whatever the hell that genre's called, but you know what I mean. Like those movies I talked about a minute ago, I don't have anything against those movies. Some of them I even like. Now, I wouldn't go as far to say that it's like my favorite genre or anything, but they're fine. And this movie very much falls in line with a lot of those movies. Sure, some of its content is pretty raunchy, like really raunchy at times, but as far as like the tone of the film, it's very much like those movies. The movie had a very enjoyable tone to it. Throughout the entire thing, I had a smile on my face. The story is ridiculous as all get out, but so is the story in all these types of movies. With a little bit of suspension of disbelief like you do with these types of movies, it can be enjoyable. Now, the comedy in the movie, I did enjoy a bit more than those others, probably because it was a bit more adult-oriented and pretty raunchy at times. However, even though the vast majority of it is dealing with sex and it can get pretty raunchy, it's never like graphic or anything. It still has a fairly wholesome feel to it all, even though at times they are talking about some pretty raunchy stuff. Like the sexual experiences that Avery and Larson have together. It doesn't just show these two like getting it on in bed. No, there's like these fantasy visions that we get throughout the film whenever they're doing these things, and these are actually pretty funny. Like one of them, when she's giving Larson, you know, a handy, we see him in like a rocket ship as an astronaut about to take off, and she's like at mission control telling him, okay, do this and do that, and he's telling her, okay, I'm about ready. And then of course when the rocket takes off, it's all really well done and it is pretty funny. The scene when Larson orally pleasures Avery, by the way, where that goes is in particularly funny and very creative. The humor in the movie is pretty good across the board. Not every bit of it is laugh out loud, however there are a few of those moments but throughout the film, it was reliably funny. It didn't really have any eye-rolling moments or anything. The vast majority of what they got going on here was pretty damn funny. And it's not just our main characters of Avery and Larson that are funny. Pretty much the entire cast is pretty on point. Performances throughout the film from pretty much everybody on screen were one of the main things that sold this thing and made it so funny. Now, all that being said, narratively speaking, while I did enjoy the film and the story it was telling, it wasn't really telling anything new. We have seen this type of story about a million times. We have one character who likes another character and they're friends and they don't quite get together, and throughout the whole thing there is a tension, but this character doesn't even really realize that this one feels that way about them, and then in the end, you know, they have that big moment where they profess their love, and you know how this works out, right? Well, yeah, you do in most cases, but I gotta give Sex Appeal this much. The movie does not end the way that I thought it would. Now, before I get to that ending, and don't worry, I'm not gonna spoil it, I do have to say the vast majority of the movie, yes, it goes down pretty much how you expect. There's not a whole lot of surprises here. But the end of the movie did in fact surprise me. I really liked the direction they went with this movie. It wasn't just that same old that we've gotten from these kinds of movies for fucking decades at this point. Well, I don't want to give anything away. What they did with the end of this movie, I really appreciated. They shook things up. They gave us a different ending that pretty much anybody who was watching this movie was expecting. Up until this point, you knew how this movie was going to end. You knew how all of this was going to go down, and the movie just throws a curveball right there at the end, and it elevated the experience of this whole thing just by doing that. That, and it showed that they had some balls to do something different with this thing, and that is pretty much how I look at this entire film. While it does fit into that category that I was talking about earlier, I really liked that they took some risks. They did some things different with this genre that we haven't really seen in a long time, if ever. Was this like the best young romantic comedy ever made? No, but it definitely made an impression. After watching the trailer of the movie, I figured, you know, that'll be a cute movie. I'll probably enjoy it if nothing else. But what I found after watching the movie is that I enjoyed this movie a lot more than I was expecting. Guys, Sex Appeal surprised me. It was a whole lot better than I ever thought it would be. It's got some really funny performances, and that adult raunchy comedy added into that high school teen romantic comedy formula really worked for me. The story's fairly ridiculous, and you do have to have some suspension of disbelief, but man, that ending, they really landed it and delivered something really interesting there. And what else they delivered was a pretty damn funny movie that is absolutely worth a rent.
All he wanted was, hey, this.
I have to return some videotape.
I was genuinely surprised by this movie. I figured I'd probably find it at least entertaining enough for the night, but no, this movie really made an impression, especially the end. Man, the end of this movie is really good. I really liked where they went with it. So if you're looking for a pretty damn funny adult humor film for the night, then check out Sex Appeal, and I think you're gonna have a pretty good damn time with it. So there it is, guys, my review of Sex Appeal. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you want to help out the channel, check out my Patreon in the description below. Become a jarhead and get some of the awesome benefits to go along with that, like these guys, and possibly join my top tier and become a bad motherfucker like my man Greg C and Dragon Con. Also, check out my new gaming channel that I just launched. I'm going to be putting a lot of cool content on there on a regular basis, and I would appreciate it if you check it out. If you like it, give me a subscribe. Link in the description. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Sexyville.
You gotta try things to know what you want. There's a diversity of options. You've got your lefties, your righties, your straight shooters, your curvatures.
Now, we meet quite a few of Avery's teachers in the film, but by far the coolest one would be her sexual education teacher. I gotta say that if my sex ed teacher had been this cool when I was in high school, well, I probably wouldn't have, no, that's a lie. I would have still been doing all the fucking that I was doing. But you know what? I would have probably been a lot safer about it and felt better about it overall. I mean, because she was out there like smoking a joint and like throwing condoms at people. My sex ed teacher was some nerdy guy who just sat there and drew pictures on the blackboard and said, this is ovaries and this is how babies are made and yada yada yada. I didn't really get a lot from that. I mean, hell, he told my class about his wet dream in a bit more detail than I would have liked. Honestly, any detail was more detailed than I would have liked, but he told a 6th grade class about his wet dream. You know, now that I think about it, there may have been something more up with this guy.